Praise the Lord. I do not own the rights to this music. To the Jesus, he's still known. So no matter what may come my way, I never fight his even when Satan seems to reach from his hand. I hear him say, this is my secret. I'm in his safety, dwelling in his way. Thus great is the Lord and greatly to be praised. I am so excited this afternoon. So very excited this afternoon to have an unscheduled special edition of the Prophets Porch. I have a very special guest who is no stranger to the Prophets Porch. We just wanted to have a unscripted conversation, dialogue about current events, things that I've been getting inbox messages about concerning what my perspective is. I'm always interested interested that people just want to hear what I have to say or hear what I think about certain things. Certainly, I know my guest gets those types of messages. I'm asking what his perspective is, what he thinks about something, or what the Lord is saying about certain situations and so forth. It just never ceases to amaze me. The caliber of people that ask me questions concerning what the Lord is saying and so forth and so forth. And so this is a very unscripted. We're just going to flow and so forth and bounce things off of each other. I have with me great man of God from Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, in the person of Apostle Ray Williams. Welcome, Apostle Williams.
Good morning, sir. How are you? Or good afternoon, I should say.
Yes, sir. It is 2:05 Eastern Standard Time here in Richmond, Virginia. And you're about an hour behind me, right?
Absolutely. It's 1:05 Central Standard Time here in Dallas, Texas.
Wow. I was just telling the people, Apostle, I'm a jump right in. It never ceases to amaze me, the caliber of people that ask me questions concerning what the Lord is saying and about current events and so forth. And when I'm talking about the caliber of people, I'm talking about people that I can only speak for me. They have degrees, have major congregations, have major notoriety, and they want to know what little old Bishop Kenny has to say about such and such. You get those types of inquiries?
I do, and out of that experience, I've learned, man, that it is possible to have a platform and still be foreign to his presence. And so those who have popular platforms who have not been into his presence, what makes them, I guess, relevant or effective, I should say, relevant may not be the best term. What makes them effective is that they have enough sense to get connected with people who have presence, who spend time in his presence. So that I used to really struggle with that. I don't struggle with it as much now because I understand that we live in a time where people, chase clout, not necessarily Christ.
Wow. That's a good word, clout instead of Christ. Lord have mercy. You just said something right there, sir.
Yeah, people are looking for the next on thing. Doesn't matter if it's the God thing. I just need to be on. And so, platforms are often developed really without presence. And you're seeing the beginning of a lot of that go away and diminish because throughout this whole experience that we have found ourselves thrust into with the pandemic, with the culture and the climate of our country here in America, you're seeing a lot of that be ineffective because though it has been sustaining in seasons of grace or that many would call good times, it is not effective when challenged.
Absolutely. The types of questions I've been getting, Apostle, Oh my gosh. Of course, if you're prophetic at all, people are asking you, who do you think the next president, who is the next president is going to be, and all that. I said, that's not my lane. That's not my grade.
Yeah, well, I gave a word about it several months ago, and it has finally come to pass. And of course, a lot of my friends who are conservative and who happen to be to the right scorned me. Many stopped speaking to me, stopped talking to me.
Really? It was that
Yeah,
serious?
yeah. This has been a season, man, where um, you've really gotten a chance to see who people are, and you've really gotten a chance to see how, to say it lightly, how really immature some people in leadership positions are. And that is, one of the things that I've experienced is we don't have to agree to be civil, and we don't have to agree on everything to maintain a quality friendship. We can agree, disagree, and yet stay in agreement. But many people, I'm gonna just say it, many people disagreed with my stance on Black Lives Matter. Many of my evangelical Christian friends, in my estimation, did not stand up for that cause. Instead, what they did was they sent a smokescreen to attack the organization. And to be clear, most people screaming Black Lives Matter have nothing to do with the organization. So I could really care less about who owns the organization or what the organization stands for. But if you didn't get that Black Lives Matter in the current climate that this country has been in for several decades, and namely the last 5 years, I believe you need to check your salvation. And I absolutely believe that they needed to check their Christ meter, because to say that Black Lives Matter was not an indication that all life didn't matter.
Right.
But to say that Black Lives Matter was really to speak up against the cries and injustice. So many people disagreed with me there. Many people disagreed with me with my criticism of President Trump. But I believe that true integrity has accountability.
Yeah.
And for many of our conservative friends who want to stand for Christ and stand for Trump, I was confused because I didn't understand how you stand for Christ and how you have a particular moral compass that is supposed to be extremely strong, and you not address many of the things that President Trump did and or said.
Right.
Of course, we ran into some serious roadblocks there. Now, one would think that if we were true believers, we call right and wrong, and no matter who you voted for, when he's out of order, he's out of order. I had a serious issue with many of my friends to the right who did not address what I considered to be the ungodly. And let's just be blunt. If many of those same people, if I did some of the same things and said some of the same things that he said, they would not permit me in their church. As a matter of fact, many of them would have run me out of their church. And so I sought the Lord and I said, God, what's going on here? He said, I permitted this to be so that I could bring the church and America face to face with its own hypocrisy. Because legislation, morality cannot be legislated. So when I came under fire when someone says he's God's choice, I said, that's absolutely not the truth. God is not any political party. No matter how you vote, morality cannot be legislated. God is looking at the hearts of people, the hearts of man. Right. And so if you stand for party over God, then that is your allegiance, and you need to, again, check your salvation. I don't believe that you can legislate morality. I don't believe that there's a bill or a policy that you can enact that's going to force a moral high ground. I think that's an internal choice that exposes itself externally. And, because let's think about it. What happens when conservatives are found in sex scandals and conservatives are found doing the ungodly and they fall from grace? Right. And we'll say that this is the party of God, or we attack the left and say that the left is ungodly, as if God doesn't love people on the left and on the right. So my perspective of it is just quite different. And that being, I don't believe that legislation equals morality. I just don't. I don't believe that you can legislate morality. It's impossible to do so.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot there's a lot of divide. I mean, I just think that sometimes people just say things just to hear themselves talk. On these various platforms and so forth, and they really have no idea what they're talking about. They don't have any facts to back up some of the things that they say and so forth. I believe that a lot of this through this entire pandemic, Apostle, we have been seeing a lot of theater. It's been a whole bunch of theater. I mean, we've just seen so much drama, and
Mhm.
my prayer is that this election or who we have voted into this office will become a healing chapter for the world.
Well, I believe that if we look at Joe Biden said last night that it's time for America to heal.
Mm-hmm.
I believe healing can only be found in the presence of God. Now, if you're
Okay.
going to lead the country into the presence of
To the
God,
direction, right?
into a direction that God that looks like God, and that really coincides with the Word of God, and not someone's interpretation of Scripture that fits their political platform, I
Got it.
think we will find healing. I also say this because I believe in being a balanced thinker. Everything President Trump did was not bad and was not wrong. It just wasn't. We have to, Black folks, we have to own that. Everything he did and said was not wrong. Now, he did say and do a lot of wrong stuff. Make no
You stretching us, Apostle. You stretching us. You stretching us.
well, here's the key. Truth will always stretch you. Truth will always stretch those who are not ready to submit to it. Is that an endorsement of Trump? No. It is a reality that the reality is this: there are several people. If he had not signed an executive order to halt evictions in this country, there's several families that would be out on the street, several families that would be displaced, several families that would not have a place to go.
Right.
That's not an endorsement of his campaign. That's not an endorsement of his platform. What I am saying, however, is that if we're going to look at this holistically, we have to look at it from a perspective where we look at total truth. And part of total truth is this. President-elect Biden is now, slated to be in the driver's seat. But what do we get? What do we get as a culture? What do we get as a community? What's his plan? What's his strategy? What's the tactics that he's going to use to make America better? When he becomes president, how are we better 100 days from now? And those are questions we have to ask.
Well, my hope is that he's not as abrasive as what we had. I mean, I can deal with my thing. And I agree with you. Trump did a lot of good things. His methods are what just messed,
Yeah,
a
and he
lot
did
of us up.
horrible things. He did a lot of horrible things. Believe me, I'm not. That's not an endorsement. He did some horrific things and said some even more deplorable things.
Yeah.
He just did. But I think what I'm getting at is this: we have to get beyond personality to realize that personalities are going to leave office. We need to look at policy, because policy is what we're going to be left to live with. Personality-wise, Donald Trump gets an F plus.
Yeah, he does get an F plus, but I think that personalities block us from getting the policies, because you have personality conflicts that need to agree upon certain things. Case in point, Mitch McConnell, he just, we know him and Donald Trump don't get along or whatever, that they're not each other's favorites and so forth. We know that there's certain, names in leadership in that administration that don't get along, and it's blocking us from getting what we need. People that need it getting what they need.
Absolutely, and I think the travesty is that the church, and I'm not talking about any particular church, any singular church. I'm talking about the global church or the church at large in America. The issue becomes where many of us are so deluded in our reality that we have failed to be the voice and failed to really be the strength of the country. I believe that we look far too great to DC and to Washington for the fabric and the continuity of our country, of our nation. I believe that the church it's incumbent upon the church to have a voice, to have influence, and to have a voice that brings the voice of God into the chambers and halls of Congress, And we're looking for them to do what I believe it's our responsibility to do. Because here's the thing, many of us pastor in communities that are voting for politicians who are going to enact these policies. And
Right.
our voice is not strong and not heard. And if our voice is not definitive, if you will, if it's not solid, then we have an issue, because now we're putting people in place to speak for us who don't speak to us.
Wow. You're right about it. You're right about it. And certainly we found out that they don't, oftentimes when these decisions are being made, very little is done to ensure the people that the policies impact, when the decisions impact, and they're not really at the table. So they don't have a voice and so forth. And I think that, it's going to be interesting to see this transition team, this new administration, who they're going to have in place, and how they vet the people and so forth, and how, because I feel like that Biden and Harris, that they're going to be more collaborative than this current administration is.
Well, yeah, I think where the current administration failed was that they were so myopic in their vantage point that they failed to realize the power of relationships. And I think, going into this, we made some very elementary, but yet very devastating mistakes. Case in point, when you appoint someone like Betsy DeVos to the Department of Education, fish out of water, a person that does not have the ability to be empathetic, if you will, or to fully understand, does not fully understand both sides of the coin. And so how can you fully represent an entire nation when you have only been, exposed to privilege, and you don't understand the nuances of what that takes? You take a person like Dr. Ben Carson, who is an amazing brain surgeon, arguably one of the best to ever do it, and yet he is overheard. Right. He has absolutely no experience. He's a fish out of water in that regard. And so when we look at this administration, we went into this term without having proper grounding, proper footing, and at the very best, we were forced to weigh out certain decisions and choices that were made. When you look at the history of this administration, we never had a full staff, never had a full cabinet, though that speaks to leadership or lack thereof. And I think that the problem that the church, or that evangelicals and we as believers made, is that we did not hold Donald Trump to the same level of integrity that we hold our local church bodies and some of our national organizations, because we felt as if we critiqued or criticized the decision, that somehow we were not supporting righteousness. And I believe that is the very first flaw that we have to abandon. Righteousness is a lifestyle, but it's also a process. And so we learn, and as we learn, we grow. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I've also learned is you can't fight the whole world and alienate a country or a nation and then say that we're great. We're as great as our relationships. We're as great as our influence, and we're as great as the people on who we can be an asset to. And when you stand across the street and throw rocks at everybody, you alienate yourself, paint yourself into a corner, and that's essentially what has happened to us over the last few years. And so when you think about it, it didn't come down to just the pandemic. I think personality and just lack of leadership. And we have to own that, for the people who say he's the greatest president ever. I just wonder if, what presidency they watched. I often wonder, we're in the same country.
Yeah, I agree. But like I said, Apostle, people do a lot of things to hear themselves talk. These are very unusual times. I believe that the desperation is unusual. I believe that people's motivations are unusual, and when you tie all that together, there's going to be chaos, and I just believe there's going to be the chaos that we've seen, and then we haven't begun to see what we're going to see as it relates to the presidential response to, all these lawsuits he says that he's going to do and so forth, which are going to be very all frivolous and so forth. But I believe that his army, whatever I call them Trumpsters, that people they're going to cause all this havoc in our cities.
And that's very unfortunate. That's extremely unfortunate that's a factor. It's extremely unfortunate that as a people, and when I mean as a people, now I'm talking about as Americans as a whole, right, that we cannot agree to disagree. And I also believe that many people. Now, one thing I will defend Trump on is this, and a lot of folks are going to be uncomfortable when I say this. I don't believe that Trump empowered the alt-right or empowered the underbelly of America. I believe that he gave voice and exposed what has already been there, and now they just had a greater platform to voice their message.
I'm gonna use that word. I'm gonna use that word that we talk about all the time. Unpack the underbelly.
Well, when you talk about the underbelly of society, we're talking about the undesirables, those individuals that seek to destroy the fabric in which we should be, ascribing to, those individuals who still would like to see people in cages and see Black folks be enslaved and see people of color be diminished. Those individuals who live their life according to race and they want one superior race. They believe that one superior race, white folks are better than Black folks and Black folks are not as intelligent. Clearly, that is not the case. And so when you look at the white nationalists and the Klan and all of those organizations and militias, you're looking at what I consider to be the underbelly, though that's the undesirable part of society. As a culture and as a country, as a nation, we're comprised of all different sorts of people. I don't believe that Trump winning the presidency, created that. That was already there. Right. I believe that it greater exposed that as a country, we have not come as far as we thought we had. And I believe that some of his antics did fuel that fire. And I also believe that many of his words did cause them to feel more emboldened. But that was already there. He didn't create that. That's been there for several decades, and you have to get to a place where you acknowledge that has never gone, because we saw that. Well, I saw that firsthand in a town called Mansfield, Louisiana, and that's when President Obama was in office. I saw that element where they were mobilizing and preparing to revitalize their efforts and all of that madness. And so I don't believe that was a Trump thing. I do, however, believe his inability to address that to the degree that I thought he should did more to make them feel emboldened, and did not, as far as I'm concerned, this is just my personal opinion, did not, as a leader of the free world, he did not address that with the level of intensity that I believe that it required. I just don't believe he did.
Yeah. And speaking of leadership, Apostle, what would you say, what would be your counsel to leaders? What would be your counsel to leaders to stabilize, any concerns that people under their sphere of influence might have? What would you say what counsel would you give that would perhaps help them? Because you're you're an influencer. We know that you're an influencer and you will influence leaders. So what would you say to other leaders to influence them, to assist them in stabilizing people under their sphere of influence?
In what regard?
Some of the emotional concern, the psychological concerns, because a lot of people are emotionally wounded by this last 4 years. There are a lot of wounds that are still there, especially in the I can say that from the people that I talk to on a regular basis, there are people that are hurting, as it relates to that, of what we just dealt with for 4 years.
Well, I think as leaders, we have to always be able to keep a clear perspective. And that perspective is, has to be clear in spite of our pain. As leaders, we don't have the liberty, and we cannot afford the liberty of being able to allow our pain to dilute our perspective.
That's good.
And though that may be difficult, when we signed up for leadership, we signed up to be able to be in a leadership position and make difficult decisions. And what makes you great as a leader, or what helps you develop as a leader, is your ability to lead in spite of the variables that you may have to overcome. And so the leader has to keep good perspective. To the degree that that leader can maintain his or her perspective, we then have to give voice to hope. And that voice to hope, in my regard, can only be found in what the Lord is saying. And so we have to point the people back to the hope. Our hope should have never been in the Trump administration, the Obama administration, the Clinton administration. It should have never been. That's not our hope. Now, because of our hope, we can help shape what we can expect to get out of those administrations. But we have to get back to our original hope. And then we also have to begin to courageously address very relevant issues from a perspective that everyone's not going to agree on.
Right.
I think that's one of the damaging elements of leadership nowadays, is we try to figure out how to get everyone to agree. I don't believe that everyone's going to agree, nor do I believe that everyone should agree.
Should agree, right?
Because it gives us a varying perspective. It gives me an opportunity. It gives me the ability to see something from another side of the coin, and that may change my perspective. So I think we have to have a holistic approach there. And then we have to be a voice of reason, and be a voice of healing. We can't fuel the flame. We can't fuel the fire. We have to be those individuals who come and say, you know what, in the midst of all of this darkness, we're still people of hope. Our hope is found in God. And that doesn't mean that we don't get involved in the process. But that does mean that as we begin to engage the process, we have to engage the process in such a manner where we engage it with truth, and that's radical truth. And radical truth offends. It offends the nature of those who don't want truth. And so then as leaderships, we have to be strong enough and capable enough to bring in outside resources that are more effective than we are in any particular capacity. So if people are mentally strained, we may want to get them access to tools that I'm not gifted with. I may not be tooled with. And then I think the final thing is we have to, after being the voice of reason, being people of hope, we have to give people direction, point people in a direction that embodies, one, the will of God, two, the hope of people that's beneficial for all people, not just Black folks, not just white folks, but for all people. And I believe we saw that in our country when George Floyd and many of the other atrocious acts enacted against Black people with law enforcement. We saw the country, one, be pulverized in one regard, but then we saw them unify in another regard. And so the danger of what we saw with Black Lives Matter, if you would, is that the powers that be could not deny that the world was tired. The country, not just the country, but the world wanted to see change. And so even though there are people who attacked George Floyd, they attacked his life, they attacked his history. And to me, that was classless and baseless, because none of that mattered. He didn't deserve to die the way that he did. But what we saw was a country, was a nation, and ultimately the entire world say, no more, this is enough. No more. And I think as leaders, we have to get to the place where we have a compass of saying no more. And here's the thing, the final thing on that, you're going to have to choose a side.
No, you don't.
So much time trying to be middle of the road, not to offend, because we want to be Christ-like. Let me tell you something. Christ offend, and Christ still offends. And so you're going to have to choose a side. And prayerfully, you're going to have to choose the right side. And the right side is the side that makes the quality of life better for everybody, not just a handful of people. And so I think as leaders, we have to embrace truth. And we got to get around people who's not afraid to tell us the truth.
That's so true. That's so true. We definitely have to, and that goes to something that I said earlier today. We have to take ownership for our atmosphere, who you have around you, and so forth. We definitely have to take better ownership of who we have around us, as leaders. And when you're an influencer, we definitely have a greater responsibility concerning who we allow to influence us, and how we govern, how we carry, how we're responding to the different things that are happening in the world. While the world is fighting, we can't. I'm sure. Everybody could make a choice to fight. Me, I haven't been delivered from fight yet, but I can't be telling people that I influence the fight.
Well, I think for me, I think you can tell people to fight, but the fight is a different type of fight.
Got it.
You know what I mean? Many people don't engage the process, again, because they don't want to offend. And many don't engage the process because they don't want to lose connection or camaraderie. But like I said earlier, if we're friends and we fall out over a disagreement, then we were never really friends. That's not a real friendship. I believe the fight has to be very different. I admire those kids who protested. And let me be very clear. I'm not talking about people who rioted and looted. I don't think that was helpful, but I understand the frustration that created it. So I'm not endorsing rioting and looting, but I admired the generation who said, it's time for us to stand up and revolt and to protest. I thought that was very admirable. I thought that was genius. I thought if people or more leaders or who were influencers had gotten in and shown them, listen, you don't have to burn a building, but your protest and your voice can be heard. I believe that, for the first time in years, those actions of those individuals who were brave enough to get in the fight, begin to change begin police reform right before our eyes. And I think that that's something that is admirable. I greatly admired that. It was disappointing to see a lot of the rioting and looting, but what was more disappointing to me is that people focus more on the rioting and the looting than they did why the people were rioting and looting. People focus more on buildings and dwellings that could be repaired, that were insured, and less on the lives that were taken, that these families will never get those fathers back. They will never get their sons back. That was extremely painful and extremely hurtful. And so when you take a person's voice or you take a people's voice and you stamp it out, then that rage it boils over into the streets. And I believe that that's where we as leaders, we can step in and say, listen, we understand your rage. We understand your fear. We understand your anger, but let's redirect that anger and let's be more effective. And not just that, it is also more saddening that people who took an opportunity to exploit people's pain, to send people from their organizations to start fires and all that crazy stuff. So I think we're seeing that, and we need to see more of it. We need to see more people getting in the fight. We cannot win. You can never conquer what you won't confront. And in order to confront something, you have to be prepared to fight it.
Absolutely. You have to be prepared to fight it. And a couple of comments that you made point back to mental health. Oh my gosh, Apostle, I believe that, we as the body of Christ, or as, leaders, faith leaders, we need to, you and I were talking about this not too long ago, about referring people to mental health professionals. We really, really, really need to do a better job about that.
Yeah, because some things take a prayer and a pill. No, seriously, some things
we're hanging around each other too long.
We're gonna lay hands on you, but we also gonna get you a session on the couch.
Right.
And right now, as you know, when all of this pandemic stuff started, our church, we prayed every morning at 5 o'clock for 7 months. America has been traumatized.
Woo.
And there's trauma there. There's trauma there from the suburbs to the projects. And we need to cover it with prayer, but we also need to be very realistic in our approach. And that is, when people have been traumatized, we need to get them to seek help. And we need to make it okay for them to seek help. You can't tell me that we've seen some of the things that we've seen on television. I'll be honest and transparent. During the height of all of this, during the pandemic, I didn't know mentally if I was going to break or not. There came a time where I went to bed and I just slept for 3 days because I'd seen so much, I'd cried so much, I'd hurt so much, I was overwhelmed so much with the, you know, the church, with the news, with the community, where I said, God, you know, I need a break, because it had gotten to a place where I'd become numb, and that's a very dangerous place to be. And so, you know, I found myself sitting in my closet going, okay, are you okay? I know you have to be a leader. I know you're an influencer. I know people look to you, but are you okay? And I found myself sitting in my closet on the floor going, I'm not okay, and I need a break. And so I literally went to bed for 3 days, literally just went to bed for 3 days because I was not okay. I needed to regroup. I needed to reset, and I needed to be refreshed. And so it took me about 3 days of just sleeping. You know, not that I was extremely tired. I was mentally exhausted. I was emotionally bankrupt. And so I knew that. And so I picked up the phone. I called somebody that I could trust, a confidant, and you know, they began to talk me through it. And I think the key, especially for leaders, is we have to have people that we're willing to be brutally honest with. And we have to get away from this notion that we have to protect our image. Let me tell you something. If you lose your mind, there's no image you can protect.
None whatsoever.
You know, when you're losing your mind, it shows. People just are not brave enough to tell you. You're starting to lose it. And so I knew at that moment I needed to regroup, and I needed to reset. I'd seen enough. And so for about 2 weeks, I just didn't watch the news. I could not see another visual of an individual being choked, being kicked, being brutalized, being murdered. I just couldn't see it. So, you know, when you take that from an individual like myself, who I believe I'm pretty well balanced, and it impacts me in that regard, and I'm deeply spiritual and I'm impacted, and I know Jesus and I was impacted, and I'm filled with the Holy Spirit and I was impacted, and I preach the gospel and I was impacted, and I prophesy and I was impacted. It's safe to say that many other people who may not, you know, have that same skill set or that same mindset, that have been impacted, and they're somewhere wounded and hurting. And so I think the church, we have to, one, reach out to the broken. We have to reach out to the wounded, and we have to care enough to, one, make sure that we're safe. And what I mean by that is, if I am emotionally bankrupt, if I'm not okay, I'm not safe. So I have to make sure that I'm safe, so that when I begin to minister or begin to pour into other people, that I'm doing so from a place of safety and a safe place. That's very important. And until we can do that, you know, I think we need to revisit whether or not it's okay for, one, people of color, two, clergy, three, the gifted, however you want to chalk it up, to say that, listen, I might need to go and talk to somebody. And you need to talk to somebody who is qualified.
Come on, sir. Qualified, not something they got off the internet.
Yeah, you need to see. Well, here's my thing. You need to talk to someone who's qualified. What I mean by that is, it's great to go with people who have credentials and degrees. That doesn't necessarily qualify them, because I've met some qualified people who are not psychiatrists, who are not psychologists, but they're extremely qualified. And sometimes experience, life, wisdom will qualify you. And then sometimes you need someone with something on their wall and a prescription pad that's going to help you make it through it. And I say that, and I say that publicly, and prayerfully, I'll never need to be there. But if ever that was the case, I would not hesitate to say, listen, I need some help.
I have been there.
There's too much at stake for me to not be safe.
Right.
So that would be my word to leaders, is ensure that you're safe, and drop the image. No one's buying it. You owe yourself more than to become a prisoner to the image that you created.
Can you repeat that, please?
Which part?
Oh, no one's buying it. Drop the what?
Yeah, drop the image. No one's buying it. The old people would say your slip is showing. You know, there's too much at stake. There's too much invested in you being okay for you not to be safe. If you value your ministry, and you value your relationship with God, and you value the people you lead, you value the community in which you lead, you owe it to yourself to be safe. And part of being safe is being okay. We cannot take this narcissistic perspective that I'm okay. No. When you're not okay, it's okay to not be okay. That's okay. There will come times in your life where you're not okay, and you're the pastor, you're the leader, you're the executive, you're the teacher, you're the husband. It's okay to not be okay. As a husband, as a father, this year has been extremely challenging. I've never seen the things that we've seen in our world. So imagine trying to navigate being able to father and explain to my children what they're seeing on the television, what's being talked about at school. And never in all my days have we ever been to a place where the children don't get to go to school, and they can't go to school because of an invisible enemy. And then when they turn on the television, they're now been sequestered. They're not being as sociable, because I don't care what anyone says, social media is not socialization.
It's not.
It's not. Now, people will debate that, and we can debate that to the hills. But the bottom line is social media is not that sociable. It's not being sociable. And so the children are sequestered. They're watching the television. They're seeing me cry from things that's going on. They're seeing me still trying to pray and lead the church. They're watching me and, Daddy, are you okay? I'm fine. Are you okay? I'm okay as long as you're okay. My daughter said to me, I'd be better if I knew you were really okay. And I said, listen to me. Daddy's been through worse. And I'm hurting for our country. I'm hurting for our people, mainly Black people at that particular moment. I'm hurting for America. I'm hurting for the body of Christ. I'm hurting for the kingdom. I'm having body intercession that's going on that you can't explain to everybody, because not everybody knows what that is. It seems crazy. What do you mean body intercession? It's where my body is beginning to respond to the things that are going on spiritually, because we've tried to remove spirituality and think that politics is going to be the end all be all. But the Bible says we wrestle not against flesh and blood. We're not fighting Donald Trump. We were fighting principalities that were influencing the actions and ideologies of Donald Trump. We were not fighting a man. We were not fighting an administration. The church should have been fighting principalities and powers and spiritual darkness and spiritual wickedness and rulers of high places. We should have been fighting that. And we became so distracted that we allowed the enemy to come in and to move us from our place. And we forgot that we were spiritual beings mastering the human experience. And we tried to fight humanity. We tried to fight insanity, with our humanity. And it didn't work.
And never will work. Never will work.
And so to leaders, especially from a spiritual perspective, remember who called you and why you were called. And that should be at the forefront of every choice you make, including the choice you make in the voting booth.
That is so important. You talked about, being okay and dropping the image, no one's buying it. I think that what has helped me since this pandemic, keep in mind, and I've said this before on the broadcast, you and I have known each other for about 13 years. Mm-hmm. We met on social media, but since the pandemic, the Lord has allowed us, us to become closer to each other and communicate on a more regular basis. And I believe it's connections that I have with certain brothers that we sharpen each other. And that is what has kept my mind.
And I think what we need to share with the people is that was needed. I needed that. You needed that. And we were able to dialogue in very transparent and honest ways. We were able to hurt together. We were able to pray together. We were able to laugh together. We were able to cuss together when we were frustrated. I know I probably shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry.
Come on. See, you say it again. Cuss together.
That was needed.
We're not letting that go. Cuss together. Y'all get over it. Cuss together. Cuss, yes.
We were able to do all of those things.
And I cuss good.
That's saying. And I'll be honest, it's a travesty that we didn't see more of that. And that we didn't see it. I'm not going to say that it didn't exist, but it's a travesty that we didn't see more of it. And the thing that I learned in that whole process is this: God will sometimes bring you into the company of people and you don't know until the season arrives exactly what they should mean to you.
You're absolutely right. And I, again, and there are not many people that It's not many people. Let's just be honest. It's not many people you can do. No, everybody doesn't get to know Ray.
Listen, there are preachers who are watching me right now, and they've not heard anything else I said because they heard me say we cussed.
Right.
All of the substantive stuff that we said went out the window because I said we cussed. When the truth of the matter is this, I did cuss and they cuss, but they have totally disconnected because we were honest enough.
I ain't mad.
See, people don't want total transparency and authenticity. They want conformity. I'm telling you, I got some brothers who are going to text me later. Man, why would you say that? Or why would you say that? Because
please send them my number. Please send them my number.
And I think that needs to leave the church.
Yes.
That needs to leave the church.
I tell you, it's, it is a blessing in my life to have people around me that I can be Avery with, because there's some people, you need to have people around you that you can de-roll. And thank you, Overseer Anita Leach. She's a wonderful counselor, licensed counselor, and she introduced that terminology to me. There are people around that sometimes leaders, we just need to de-roll. Mm-hmm. Have people around us that we can not be in that role, where we can cut it off, and not be pulled on, and not be, listen, when you're prophetic, you almost feel like everywhere you go, somebody's pulling on you for a word.
And, I had to learn over time, when they say, what's the Lord saying? I don't know. He's not speaking right now.
Right.
Seek him for yourself. The scripture says, if you seek him, you'll find him.
I'm going to tell you, I love Prophetess Zoe because, listen, she'll tell you when people, she says one of her pet peeves is when people get on her live and say flow. It's like that's the key word, or give me a word or something like that. She really gets down on people and, calls them out about the little antics that people use to try to pull something from the prophet, that the Lord, kind of try to put them on the spot so they can conjure up a word.
And I think people mean well, but they don't understand how degrading and demeaning that is. I had not a good friend, I had a person that had befriended me, and we were having a good friendship. And so I just thought to ask, why are we friends? I said, and they said, we get along well. I said, we do, but why are we friends? And the person said to me, honestly, I'm afraid to tell you. I said, well, sure. And the person said, because you're prophetic and you know things, and when I'm around you, I can pull stuff from you.
Really?
And I thought, well, that's the end of our friendship, because we don't really have a friendship.
Because it's based upon your gift.
Well, yeah, you're using me as a medium. That's not how I function. And I think when people will chase your gift and reject your humanity, they don't realize that that's abuse.
Yeah, it is. I don't want to manage my relationships with my gift.
Well, I never have. And the difficult thing about befriending people who happen to be spiritual or gifted is it's very difficult to find people. Like I had a good friend several years ago, and we did ministry together. His family was in my house. My family was in his house. Our families ate together. We broke bread together. I really considered him to be my brother. I did, And so one day, one night, man, I was just having a night, and I called him up, and the joker said to me, he said, pull yourself together. You're Pastor Ray. Call me back when you find Pastor Ray. I don't like this new Ray.
Really?
And I said, and I was simply telling him, listen, man, this is going on and that's going on. And I said, whoa. So you can handle my uniform, but you can't handle my humanity. So which means you don't want me.
Right.
You want the persona that you created in your mind of who I am.
Exactly.
Of course, that was the end of our friendship.
Oh yeah. Listen, if you can't handle my nakedness, you can't handle me.
Well, I think the fabric of any relationship has to be the authentic person. And I even believe that with our relationship with God. Yeah. I think Adam's most vulnerable moment, Adam's most amazing moment is when he realized he was naked standing before God. He realized the frailty of his flesh. He realized the frailty and the brokenness in his humanity. He realized a lot of times the error of his way, but it was there, that moment when Adam came face to face with who he had found himself to be, not necessarily who God had created him to be, but who he had discovered himself to be. And that happened in a moment where he was naked. Most of us go before God trying to be clothed, and he's not impressed by our attire.
Not at all. Not impressed. And something just came to my mind, Apostle. It's transparency like this that we are displaying, and that we're displaying conversation style ministry that really is blessing people that don't necessarily go to church or won't make it to church and so forth. Not a preach sermon, but just listening to a conversation of transparency, a conversation of two men of God that are not in competition, they're not jealous of each other, that don't have a romance going. Let me stop.
Yeah.
Move it on.
I'm gonna leave that alone.
Yeah, leave it alone, Apostle. Leave it alone.
And it's amazing. I started doing this about a year ago. The Lord just impressed upon me. And so like 1 week out of the month at my church, I do this. I sit and have a conversation with the congregation. Just a conversation. I actually bring a stool or a chair on the stage, and I just have a conversation. Mm-hmm. I don't preach a sermon per se, where it's in sermon format, but we have a dialogue and a conversation. And
right.
On one Thursday night out of the month, I actually do Q&A. We have Q&A because I believe that at the end of the day, it is important to be able to navigate and vacillate between who you are in a role and be able to still maintain who you are as an individual. And right. When you're able to do that, you find yourself at a place where it blesses you. See, me being me and being okay with me blesses me.
Right.
When I no longer feel the need to perform for anybody. When you call Ray is who you get. I am. When you call me, that's who you get. And I'm still gifted. I'm still anointed. I'm still intelligent. I'm still compassionate. I'm still philanthropic. On all of those things comprise who I am. You get what I'm saying? But I am too multi-layered and too multi-dimensional for you to box me into one place. And the days of me allowing people to do that are far gone. I abandoned that notion a long time ago, and I'm okay with that. You have to be authentically you, because me being authentically me glorifies the God who created me.
Absolutely.
God didn't create me so that you can reconfigure me.
Yeah. If we try to adjust everything about ourselves to fit into people's their expectations and who they want us to be, we'd be crazy.
Absolutely. And I think many people don't survive hardship because they never found them.
Absolutely.
They're trying to figure out how to navigate their difficulties being the person that they have to be for some other people.
You're right. And let me ask you a question, Apostle. That brings me to a thought. Mm-hmm. Do you think that there's a certain age by which a person should have already found their identity? You think somebody should be 35 years old and still trying to find themselves?
Oh man, okay. Let me unpack that. I really caution answering this question because I really want the people to hear me. So give me a moment and let me unpack it.
Okay.
I believe that each of us arrive in our own time.
Okay.
What I mean by that is some of us arrive early, some of us arrive late. I think it's important to never set a marker without fully examining a person's prior experience.
Got it.
If you're 35, 45, and you're still finding yourself, the good news is that you're still alive and still sane enough to know that there's a self to find.
That's good.
The other portion of that becomes this. If my formative years were so contaminated that it brought me into something, i.e. a relationship, a marriage, a certain career choice through trauma, and I've spent 20 years trying to navigate that, we have to get beyond the fact that, you're 35 and you haven't arrived. We
Right.
have to begin to celebrate the fact that people have now had a moment of clarity, that their reality has now changed, and they realize that there's a greater them to pursue.
Right.
I personally don't believe that there's a particular age limit that one should pressure yourself
Mm.
to meet a certain parameter by, or to become a certain person. Because when you don't meet said goal, are you balanced enough to realize that that does not define you?
Got it.
Also, when a person has been traumatized most of their life and trauma has become their norm, we have to realize that their moment of awakening may arrive at 21, it may arrive at 50. But as long as they arrive, the key becomes, can I arrive in a place where I'm virile enough, vibrant enough, and still strong enough to pursue the person that I'd like to become?
Right.
So that being said, I believe that that answer is different for everyone,
Everyone got it.
depending on your experience, depending on, I like to call it your pathology. My pathology may not be yours, but my pathology is very significant to my experiences, my ability to reason, my ability to navigate many of the things that I've gone through. Because let's just face it, there are certain traumas you can go through early that you block out and you can carry for years until you wake up one morning crying and don't know why you're crying, and you realize that trauma that I buried 10 years ago
Mm-hmm.
didn't kill.
It's arrested development.
Essentially. So I think, every person arrives. If I looked back at my life now and everything that I thought that I was going to be and have achieved by now, I would be suicidal. But
Oh
when
my.
I looked at my life, I realized that there were certain things that I looked to achieve that, one, I was not capable of achieving at that time. And two, if God had given it to me, I would have squandered it, and it probably would have killed me and many people that I loved and cared about. And so I appreciate now being able to look back at many of the things that I was shooting for and appreciate the disappointments. There's certain disappointments that wounded me in my formative years that I'm so grateful. Now, when I look back, I'm so glad that I had that disappointment, because now that I'm in possession of what that may be, or in pursuit in other areas, I realize that I'm better equipped, I'm more mature, I'm wiser, I have a different perspective, and I have a deeper level of gratitude for the process. And I have a deeper level of gratitude for the people that God has sent in my direction to aid me. And so if I arrive a little later than others, that's okay, because arriving late don't mean I won't get to stay.
Right.
Just because they took off before you don't mean that you're not going to take flight.
That's good. That's real good.
I think you have to keep that. And the way the Lord dealt with me is, I'm a fan of aviation. He said, a small jet can take off before a mid-sized jet. A mid-sized jet can take off before a heavy jet, and a heavy jet can take off before a jumbo jet. But the key becomes, when the jumbo jet takes off, all of those other planes would have been grounded and landed, because they could not go as far and they could not hold as much cargo. And so not arriving early simply means that you have greater capacity to go greater lengths and greater distance, and you also have capacity to be able to deal with greater turbulence.
Right. Right.
You follow me? The heavier the jet, the bigger the plane, the less you feel the turbulence, and that goes to capacity. So I think that question is not one that we can give just a one-dimensional answer. I believe that has levels and variables to it. And when I look back at who I used to be, and I look back at how I used to function and how I used to think and feel, I'm glad that there's certain things that I did not achieve in those years, because I was too arrogant to appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Way too arrogant to appreciate it. And life has humbled me in such a way where now I can appreciate the smaller things that really are dynamic, that help me achieve greater things. And there's something to be said about humility. I have a value for humility and grace that I've never had.
Right.
Follow me? And even in that, there are certain fights that I don't engage because they're not worth fighting, even though people mean me harm in the fight. I just have to say, you know what, with the grace that's on my life, There's
Yeah.
no need to answer that.
Well, that, yeah, and I heard someone recently say, the type of fights that you attract and the caliber of people that want to fight you, that is, that speaks to your rank in the spirit realm. The caliber of people that try to fight you, that want to fight you, the caliber of people that come to you for counsel, that determines your rank. And I think that it's wise not to engage everyone that wants to to banter and toil with you and fight, and concerning baseless things, it's just stuff that's not even worth having a conversation over.
Bishop, we could surmise that thought with this. You've never seen a general debate a private.
Come on, sir. Come on.
In the discussion, you've never seen a general stop to debate with a private.
Look, they can't even get to him. They can't even get
the level of authority that the general has, the level of access that the general has, the level of insight that the general, we're not the same. We don't eat on the same level. Our perspective is not the same. Our vantage point is not the same. And the stroke of our pen doesn't have the same weight.
Come on, sir.
And you have to realize that there's certain people that I wouldn't dare argue with. There's certain people who want to argue with you that don't have the capacity to handle your rebuttal.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, their level of maturity is just not there. The rank, the maturity.
That level of maturity, I think it's their level of comprehension. I say it this way. The air appears thin. It's hard for most people, simple people, to breathe up here. This type of air, you wouldn't survive. And many of us would do ourselves a favor and do ourselves a real service if we would just look at where God has brought us, the dues that we've paid, the sacrifices that we've made, to look back and to argue with someone who has no experience, who has no wisdom. Everything they know, they got off of fact check in Google.
Right.
Their source is Google. Google will never beat out experience. I was sharing with a guy the other day, and he was saying, well, us millennials, we're different. I said, don't I know it? Don't I know it? I said, not only are you very different, you're more impressionable.
Yeah.
Because the weight of how you define yourself is really dictated by the genre you were born in. And what if you were born in a genre, but your capacity exceeds it? You have taken yourself and you have limited yourself to a particular genre because it's popular. What are you going to do when it's no longer popular?
Yeah. And listen, and then the attention span leaves when it's no longer popular.
Exactly. Like I look at a lot of the rappers, I'm young so-and-so and young so-and-so, and I'm little so-and-so. And I say to myself, well, you must not want to sell records when you become older.
Because you're dating yourself.
Yeah, you're very limited. So, it's good to leave small minds with small things.
Yeah.
They do well there.
You're right. I just don't.
We're the greatest minds on the planet. I'm not suggesting that. I am, however, suggesting that I've realized that you don't argue with the fool.
Listen, I've long since stopped arguing with folks. That's why I have so much peace in my life now. I don't engage. I don't respond, especially on social media. I know when someone's fishing for a fight. Sometimes I post things that are very controversial and so forth. And that's just my oil. I say things that others won't say or don't say. Mm-hmm. I address issues that others don't and won't address. And so, there are a group of people that like to poke at the beehive, and I'm just not even going to respond.
I think you get to a place in life after you have fought. Well, let me say it like this. I'm at a place in life where I only want to talk to killers.
Why is that?
If you have killed nothing, you and I have nothing to talk about.
Wow.
If you haven't killed anything, you don't deserve a seat at the table. You ought to be glad just to be in the room. What I mean by that is people who've killed something, is people who've conquered something, they've built something, they've overcome something, they've made the world or their city, their region, their assignment better because they were able to come in to overcome. And so unless you've killed something, be quiet and learn something. Learn how to use your weapon. Learn how to use your tool. And I think that's the issue with young leaders a lot of times today is they want respect that they've not earned.
You're right. You're right. I believe that, you have people that act like they have graduated from the kiddie table and they really haven't.
Yeah. And the worst kind of person to deal with is a person who, oh, I know. I already know. Well, if you already know, why are we having this conversation? And when you've killed something, you realize if you take me and stand me up in a room with 10 preachers, I'm the worst one trying to learn something from every other one. And I'm okay with saying that about myself. You can take 10 preachers and line them up. I'm the worst preacher in the room trying to learn something from every one of them. Why? I want to be better. I want to be the best in the room. I want to know what to do. I want to know what not to do. I want to know what I can improve on. I want to know what would make me better. I want to know what opportunities are beyond what I've been exposed to. And the best way to know that, and the best way to be a great killer is to be a silent killer.
Be a silent killer. And get in the room and be quiet when you're in the midst of generals, and I'm not talking about fake generals. I'm talking about real generals.
Absolutely.
You don't get in there and try to earn preaching engagements and try to impress them with your knowledge. And so you get in there and be quiet. When you get at tables with people like, names that we hear, dining room table names, and even names that aren't dining room table names, that carry, the right to be identified as generals and so forth. You get in there and you be quiet. It irritates me so much when you get in a room full of preachers and everybody's trying to impress each other.
Let me tell you something. Some years ago, I had an opportunity to spend a 3-day weekend with Apostle R.D. Hinton.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was a young pastor, just planted a church. My church was doing well. I had a little notoriety, but I had some sense too. I got an opportunity to spend a 3-day weekend with him, and we were in a conference room and everybody was vying to get in, and I had a seat at the table. We were in that conference room 3 hours. I don't believe I said 3 words. My armor bearer sat, and when we were leaving, he said, Pastor, I said, yeah. He said, why didn't you say anything, man? I said, listen, those guys have paid dues that I don't even know I need to pay yet.
Right.
There was nothing that I had to say that was going to mean anything to them. Those were not the people that I needed to impress. I was so grateful to be at the table. And to this day, I'm still humbled. He looked at me and, he's dead now. He looked at me and he shook his head. Yeah, that's the greatest compliment that I've ever had. He shook his head. Yeah. And then he said, you got it.
Yeah.
I just said, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Listen, I was on his coattail for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that I said 30 words to him in 3 days. I sat, I watched, I listened. I sat, I watched, I listened. Now at that particular conference and that particular table, there were some heavy hitters and some generals at the table. There was nothing that I could bring to the table that they hadn't seen or heard. But when I left from that table,
you were full.
I was full, but not only was I full, I was respected. One of those generals said to me, he said, Ray, he called me by my whole name. Ray Williams, I could learn something from you, but I could also teach you something. And he told me, he said, you have a deficiency that I've noticed, and I can help you in that regard. And you can help me in this regard. And I said, yes, sir. He said, and I'm going to help you if you can be helped. And he did.
I love it. I love it.
When God brings you in a room, sometimes it ain't for you to handle the room.
It's not.
God will bring you in the room and you trying to work the room, and God is saying, just shut up.
Just shut up.
Just
hush.
Shut up.
Just hush.
Just hush. You're in the room. Be grateful that you're at the table. Just hush. There's nothing worse than someone trying to impress everybody, because the people you're trying to impress are mentally thinking that you're incompetent and incapable.
Yeah, they're secretly thinking that, I was, and I'm gonna share this with you. I went to a banquet, a friend of mine's birthday banquet, apostle friend of mine's birthday banquet a couple of years ago, and I was the master of ceremony, and there was an 86-year-old female bishop that was there. She had been preaching for over 60 years, and just sitting next to her and just listening to the stories, while we ate dinner, just listening to the stories and so forth. I mean, it just so blessed me. I was like, wow, wow, wow. She just shared stories of, coming up in ministry and some of the challenges that she had and so forth, and all those things. It was worth it all to me, just being there, just sitting. I was strategically placed next to her just to listen to, those, I call them war stories.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to those war stories and just oh my gosh, she poured out so much. It was like wow, 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 wow,
Makes you better, doesn't it?
What'd you say?
I said it makes you better.
It did make me better. I always like hanging around older people anyway. I always did.
I've always liked hanging, around eagles.
Yeah.
Because eagles, they don't come to the ground to mate with you. They make you come up to where they are.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, eagles mate in the air.
Do they?
Yeah.
Oh my God, we can learn something from them eagles, huh?
Yeah, you got to meet me in the air.
I'm not messing with you, Ray Williams.
No. What I mean by that is this: when you meet people of certain caliber, when you meet generals, they don't dumb down so that you can be comfortable.
No, they don't.
They compel you to ascend.
Mm-hmm.
And if your circle does not compel you to ascend, you don't have a circle. You got a cage.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to people who compel me to come up, who compel me to think deeper, who compel me to really dig deeper. You want those type of people. I want people who force me to say, man, how did he think that? Because when people compel you to come up,
mm-hmm.
they allow you the privilege of seeing from a higher vantage point.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have those type of people in your circle, you're doing yourself a disservice. If you're the highest person in your circle, you're not going far.
None at all.
You're not going far at all.
At all.
And you can tell a lot about where you are by who's in your circle. And
absolutely.
Where they are.
Absolutely. Apostle, this has been so wonderful. You and I could just, could stay and do this all day. I respect the fact that your worship service is in a few hours. And I want you to be refreshed and get you some rest and so forth. This has been rich, sir. I'm every time we get on here, you just confirmed that I did not miss God. Sometimes people think that, we just jump online just to be jumping online. But I am assured that we did not miss God, and we blessed some people today just by this conversation, the multiple layers of conversation. We talked about a lot of different things today, and I just want to say I appreciate you for just availing yourself and just sharing the gift that you are here on the Prophets Porch.
Man, I appreciate the privilege of being able to be privileged to be on the Prophets Porch. I don't take it for granted at all. I don't believe that just because I'm me that people believe I have something to say. And I appreciate the opportunity that you afford me to be here and the opportunity that you afford me to be heard. That speaks a lot to who you are, and also speaks a lot to who you believe I am. And that in and of itself, I honor that. So I just appreciate that. I appreciate the audience of the Prophets Porch for always allowing me the privilege to engage. That's an honor within itself, because I've said several times what I believe God's doing with the Prophets Porch and how God's going to use the Prophets Porch, and just being able to be a part of it, just being able to be a part in any capacity. I'm okay. If you wanted me to just sit in your studio and press the buttons, take it to this camera, Ray. I'd be okay.
You are too kind. You are too kind.
No, it needs to be said, because I understand the value of acknowledgement and encouragement. When God calls you to something great like the Prophet's Porch, that's not easy.
No, it's not.
That's not easy, sir. That's
not easy at all.
And so I encourage you, I acknowledge your platform, your efforts, and appreciate you allowing me the privilege of my presence being here. So the honor is all mine.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate you. Listen, Prophets Porch audience, I appreciate you guys for your faithfulness to support me. I appreciate you guys taking time out of your very busy schedules to sit on the porch and lean into some wisdom. This is the Prophets Porch, where we are preparing people to propel in purpose and destiny. Listen, if you'd like to sow into the Prophets Porch, we want to provide that opportunity to you. You can do so at via Cash App at $Avery Kinney. Let me put that right on the bottom of the screen. $Avery Kinney. If you want to send a seed directly to Apostle Williams, his Cash App is $RW Collections. That's $RW Collections. Did I get that right, Apostle?
RW Collection, no S.
Oh, RW Collection, no S. RW Collection, no S. And so if you want to sow directly into Apostle Ray, please feel free to do so. It is certainly, I can attest to, good ground to sow into, and so forth. I'm one of those people that we need to obey God, that believe that you should obey God concerning seed. Just please obey God. When the Lord prompts you to sow seed, obey God concerning seed and so forth. That is just so important. I'm finding that the older and longer I'm in ministry, the older that I get, we need to obey God concerning the seeds that we sow. You agree with me, Apostle?
Absolutely. I think that if you want to live a life of harvest, you're going to have to live a life of being a seeder. The scripture says he gives seed to the sower. As you sow, you will never be without seed. Live your life as a sower, and you will never, ever be without seed. I'm very passionate about teaching on giving, and I mean, when I teach about giving, I'm talking about from a holistic perspective: your time, your treasure, your talent, your efforts, your sacrifice. I live my life as a giver. Bottom line, I'm proud to be a giver. I'm proud to be a giver. No, man, I'm proud to be a giver. Now, I'm very strategic in my giving, but I'm proud to be a giver. Amen. So you should absolutely live your life as a giver, no matter who you are. Give where you're going.
That's good, sir. That's really good. Well, Apostle, once again, thank you so much. It's my prayer that you guys have a wonderful worship experience this evening at 5:30 p.m. at Reset Church. Tell the people where they can find you online, Apostle.
You can find me online on Twitter at pastor_Ray. You can find me online at raywilliams.org. You can find us here on Facebook at facebook.com/Reset Church DFW. You can find me on Instagram at Ray Williams Official. Where else? Yeah,
you out there. We appreciate the Lord for you being out there. We appreciate the Lord for you being out there. You all have a wonderful service today, and you and I will touch base offline really soon. Listen, Prophets Porch, I love and appreciate you all. Thank you all for indulging us. Thank you for your support, and thank you for the seeds that you are going to sow. We appreciate the Lord for you. I will see you guys on Tuesday. Around 9 a.m. I'll be on the Prophets Porch for our normal Tuesday experience on the Prophets Porch. God bless you, and you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. God bless you.